My name's Ryan. I'm 34 years old, born and raised in Ohio, and I work as a civil engineer. I've never been the dramatic type. I'm the kind of guy who plans for delays, overinsures everything, and still keeps a flashlight in the car, just in case. My life has always been rooted in logic and structure. Stress analysis, material fatigue, safety margins, these are the things I understand. They're dependable, predictable. I wish I could say the same about people. I married Madison 7 years ago. She was different from me in all the ways that mattered. Loud where I was quiet, bold where I hesitated. She had this easy charisma that drew people in like gravity. I remember the first time I saw her at a friend's backyard party. She was drinking a margarita out of a plastic red cup and explaining, loudly and with wild gestures, why fonts with serifs were underrated. I thought she was full of herself. But then she looked right at me and smiled like I was in on the joke. I was hooked. Our marriage wasn't perfect. Whose is? But it was good. At least I thought it was. We'd built a life that looked right from the outside and mostly felt right from the inside. We had routines. We split chores, celebrated anniversaries with small getaways, and spent Sundays watching those terrible cooking shows she liked. Madison worked in PR, and she was always full of stories. Sometimes I'd tune them out, especially when she got caught up in drama at work, but I liked listening to her talk. She brought energy to the quiet places in my life. I'd always believed that doing the right things, being loyal, present, financially responsible, was enough. I wasn't the guy who forgot birthdays or came home late smelling like whiskey and excuses. I tried. I thought trying mattered. It was a Wednesday when things began to shift. Not in an explosive way, but in the kind of subtle crack that only looks obvious in hindsight. That morning, I decided to work from home for a bit before heading to the office. There was construction near the freeway, and I figured I'd skip the worst of the rush hour. Madison had already left for work when I got up. I made some toast, scanned my emails, and debated whether I should just go in anyway. I don't usually stray from my schedule. But then I remembered there was a new cafe that had opened about a week ago. One of those trendy places with reclaimed wood tables and local artwork on the walls. Madison had mentioned it once. Said their cold brew was actually worth talking about. So I packed up my laptop and decided to give it a *T. I thought I might even bring her back a pastry or something. Just a little surprise. When I walked in, the place was almost too much. Tiny succulents on every table. A chalkboard menu with drink names like Velvet Hammer and Solar Bloom. There were at least 3 people wearing beanies indoors, and someone in the corner was playing a steel string acoustic guitar for no one in particular. I ordered a double espresso and found a spot near the back, close to an outlet, away from the music. As I was unpacking my laptop, I heard a familiar voice. Not the words, but the tone. A laugh that curved upward, sharp and warm. A laugh I used to know like my own breath. I turned, and there she was, Madison, sitting at a high table near the front windows, surrounded by 3 people I didn't recognize. 2 men and 1 woman. They all had that polished advertising agency look. Good hair, better teeth, too much cologne. One of the guys, tall, fit, with that annoying kind of effortless stubble, was leaning into her space in a way that felt a little too natural. His eyes locked on hers like they shared some kind of inside joke. Madison's face lit up as he spoke, and she laughed again, tossing her hair over her shoulder the way she used to when she was trying to charm someone. I froze. I don't know why. I could have gotten up and said hi. I could have walked out and pretended I hadn't seen anything. But instead, I stayed seated, sipping my espresso and watching like I was in the middle of someone else's life. There was nothing inherently wrong about what I saw. People laugh. Colleagues meet for coffee. It wasn't a crime. But something about her body language, how she tilted her head, the way her eyes lingered, made my stomach twist. It was the laugh that really got me. It wasn't the polite kind she used when we went out to dinner with my coworkers. It was real. It was the kind that came from deep down, the one I hadn't heard in a long time. Not from her. Not around me. I watched her for maybe 15 minutes. They were discussing something on a laptop. At one point, the guy leaned in and adjusted the screen for her, his hand brushing hers. She didn't flinch. She smiled. like it was the most natural thing in the world. I know how ridiculous this sounds. I know how it sounds to sit in a cafe and spy on your own wife like some character in a bad Netflix drama. But I couldn't help it. Something in my chest was tight, and my mind started pulling up memories I hadn't thought about in weeks. Maybe months. Her new phone with the Face ID she never let me set up. The way she'd stopped kissing me goodbye in the morning. How she always seemed to be on her phone at night, claiming it was work emails. The sudden interest in fitness classes. The expensive perfume I didn't recognize. The cologne that lingered faintly on her blazer last Thursday when she hugged me and said she was too tired for dinner. At the time, I'd ignored those thoughts, called them paranoia. But now, watching her in that cafe, I didn't feel paranoid. I felt irrelevant. And that scared me more than anything else. I sat there, completely still, barely tasting my coffee. The walls of the life I thought I had started to creak. Quietly but unmistakably. A hairline fracture, invisible at first glance, but unmistakably there once you knew where to look. Eventually, I packed up my things. I didn't wait for her to leave. I didn't say hello. I just walked out, climbed into my car, and sat there for a long time with the engine running. I kept thinking, maybe it's nothing. But that laugh told me it was something. And that was the moment everything started to change. After that morning at the cafe, I couldn't concentrate. I drove to the office like I was on autopilot, replaying every detail I'd seen. The way Madison leaned in, how the guy touched her hand without hesitation, how she let him. None of it screamed affair. Not by itself, but something about it all, the energy between them, settled into my gut like a warning. Not a loud siren, more like a distant smoke alarm that wouldn't stop beeping. You know something's off even if you can't see the fire. I told myself it was nothing. People laugh with coworkers. People touch hands. People have good days. I clung to those justifications like a man hanging off a ledge. But denial is a fragile safety net. It holds just long enough for you to realize how far you're about to fall. That night, Madison came home late. Said she'd stayed for a quick drink after work. When I asked who she was with, she said just the team and didn't offer names. Her voice was casual, like she wasn't hiding anything. But I was listening differently now. Every word sounded rehearsed. She was wearing that same perfume again, the one I hadn't bought her. She kicked off her heels and sat on the edge of the bed like nothing had changed, scrolling on her phone while I brushed my teeth. I watched her through the mirror, trying to read her expression. She looked happy, relaxed, like someone who had let go of a secret, not someone carrying one. I didn't ask about the guy at the cafe. I didn't mention I saw her. I don't know why. Maybe I was afraid of the answer. Or maybe, deep down, I was hoping she'd give me a reason not to ask. But over the next few days, little things kept stacking up. She changed the passcode on her phone. That had never been a thing between us. We both used to know each other's codes. I noticed it the first time she asked me to check if she got a text while she was in the shower. I picked up her phone out of habit and saw the lock screen. I tried her old code. Then her birthday. Then mine. Nothing worked. When she came out of the bathroom, I asked about it. "Oh," she said, drying her hair with a towel. "I had to update it for work. IT made everyone do two-step stuff. Super annoying." I nodded. She moved on like it didn't matter, like she hadn't just built a new wall between us. A few days after that, she started taking more late-night calls. She'd step out to the patio after dinner and talk in a low voice, claiming it was campaign-related, some crisis with a client in another time zone. But PR emergencies don't usually involve soft giggles and 15-minute pauses of silence. Sometimes I'd catch her staring off between sentences, like she wasn't even on a call. One night I walked out to hand her the charger she forgot, and she jumped, actually flinched, and pressed the screen against her chest like a teenager hiding texts from their parents. "Work call," she said quickly. "Really don't need my battery dying." I didn't say anything, just handed her the charger. But something had shifted. She used to tell me everything, what her coworkers were wearing, what awkward thing her boss said, what she had for lunch. Now it was just, work was fine. Period. End of story. I started noticing her scent too. Not perfume this time. Something else. A different cologne. Not strong, not constant, but every so often, faintly there. The first time I caught it was on the inside of her scarf when I hung it by the door. The second time was when I hugged her after she came home late. She kissed me on the cheek like always, but I could smell it. Something musky, expensive, and definitely not mine. I told myself it was probably someone she worked with. Offices are cramped. People hug. But I couldn't ignore how quickly she put her clothes in the laundry after those nights. Like she didn't want the scent to linger. Still, I said nothing. I went through the motions. Made coffee in the morning. Packed leftovers in our glass Tupperware. Kissed her on the forehead. I played the role of the calm husband because that's what I'd always been. Steady. Loyal. Rational. But my thoughts were spiraling. I started checking the little details. One morning while she showered, I looked at her calendar on the fridge. There was a team strategy offsite scribbled in pink marker next Thursday. It was her handwriting. I remembered her mentioning a work retreat, but something about the timing felt off. I checked my phone and pulled up her company's website. Basic PR firm info, recent campaigns, photos of staff. The guy from the cafe was there. His name was Dylan Hart. Creative director. Dylan. The name didn't register until later that day. I was still at the office, stuck in a meeting about a city bridge project when it hit me. I remembered the moment from the cafe. One of the guys had joked, "You glow around Dylan. Your husband must be jealous." And Madison, my wife, had laughed and said, "He doesn't even notice anymore. Not Ryan. Not my husband. Just he." Like I was some vague presence in her life. A background character she'd already written off. That memory played on a loop in my head for the rest of the day. I couldn't focus. I kept seeing her smile, hearing the way she said it. Dismissive. Detached. Not angry. Just gone. I didn't know what to do with that. I still wasn't ready to confront her. I needed more than a laugh and a suspicious cologne scent. I needed something solid. I needed to be sure. So I started paying attention. I checked her phone bill. Not the texts, those were encrypted, but the call logs. There were several numbers that came up again and again. One of them, ending in 4709, showed up at least once a day, often late at night. I Googled it. It was registered to Dylan Hart, Creative Studios LLC. That was the moment things tipped from suspicion to something more. I stared at the screen. The number highlighted. Her voice in my head saying I didn't even notice anymore. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay next to her, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft sound of her breathing. I wanted to ask her, wanted to shake her awake and demand the truth. But something stopped me. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was hope. Or maybe it was the quiet, growing realization that I already knew the answer. There's this line people talk about when it comes to betrayal, the moment you cross from guessing to knowing. Once you're on the other side, you can't go back. You can't unsee it, unhear it, unfeel it. You can lie to yourself all day long when you're living in suspicion, but once reality steps into the light, there's no more pretending. For me, that line came on a Tuesday night. Started like any other evening. Madison texted around 6:15 that she had to stay late at the office. Client revisions, deadline got bumped. "Don't wait up, Red Heart," she wrote. The heart at the end felt almost sarcastic. Maybe that was just my paranoia talking. But by then, I had already stopped trusting my gut because every time I'd felt something off, it turned out to be right. Still, I played along. Sent her a thumbs-up emoji. Ate leftovers by myself. Tried watching a rerun of a show we used to binge together. But I couldn't focus. My mind kept circling the same question. If she was lying, where was she really going? That's when I remembered her location history. We both used Google Maps. A while back we had shared our locations with each other. Just one of those convenience things when she got a flat tire late one night and I needed to find her. We never turned it off. I opened the app. My heart was already racing before I even saw the screen. She wasn't at her office. She wasn't even near it. Her blue dot was on the other side of town, parked near a strip mall off 8th and Clover. There was a Pilates studio there, a couple of boutique shops, and a small smoothie bar. It wasn't unusual for her to go to a class, but not on a deadline night. Not dressed for work. Not when she just told me she was working late. I stared at the screen for a full minute. She didn't move. 30 minutes passed. Still there. I grabbed my keys. I didn't even think about what I would say if I saw her. I just knew I needed to know. I couldn't live in the limbo of maybes anymore. The drive took 15 minutes, but it felt longer. Every red light made my chest tighten. I didn't even play music. Just listened to the sound of my own pulse. When I turned into the parking lot, I led my headlights and coasted into a spot facing the studio. There were big glass windows across the front, fogged up from the inside. A few women were leaving, laughing, holding rolled-up yoga mats. I scanned the group. No Madison. I checked the app again. She was still there. I stepped out of the car and walked along the sidewalk. The air smelled like eucalyptus and citrus. A sign by the entrance read Sunset Stretch. Last class ends at 7:30 p.m. I glanced at my watch. 7:42. And then I saw her. Inside. Through the side window. Madison. My wife. She wasn't in workout clothes. She was in her usual business casual getup. Black slacks, blouse, light makeup still perfect. And she wasn't alone. Dylan was with her. He was wearing a fitted gray t-shirt and gym shorts. His hair was damp, like he'd just finished a workout. He leaned in and said something, and she laughed, the same laugh I'd heard in that cafe. The same one that had started all of this. And then she reached for his arm. Not just a friendly tap. She touched him like she belonged there. He leaned down. She tilted her chin up. And they kissed. Not a peck. Not a cheek brush. A real kiss. Lingering. Familiar. Rehearsed. I stood there, invisible behind the tinted glass, and watched my wife kiss another man like I had never existed. Time slowed. My hands clenched into fists, then unclenched. My breath caught in my throat. A strange calm washed over me, like my body had gone into shock and was shielding me from the full weight of the collapse. I didn't storm in. I didn't pound on the glass. I didn't even move. I just stood there and watched the truth confirm itself. Every doubt, every strange behavior, every whisper of instinct I had buried, now surfaced and solid. They pulled apart slowly. He said something that made her smile again. She brushed hair from her eyes. He grabbed a gym bag from the bench. They started walking toward the exit at the back, laughing. I turned and left before they saw me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just drove. No destination in mind. I passed through neighborhoods I didn't recognize. Took roads I hadn't driven in years. At one point I pulled over at a gas station and just sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My mind kept flashing back to that moment. Her lips on his, the ease between them, like this wasn't the first time. Like this had been happening. Like I was the one living in a fantasy. I checked her location again. She was moving now, back toward downtown, probably heading home. I waited another 20 minutes before driving back, needing to make sure I didn't walk in right after her and give myself away. When I pulled into the driveway, the lights inside were already on. I sat in the car for another few minutes, just watching the glow behind the curtains. Then I finally went inside. She was at the kitchen counter, pouring herself a glass of wine. "Hey, babe," she said without looking up. "Long day. Client was a nightmare." She was good. I'll give her that. I walked over and kissed her on the cheek. It took everything in me not to flinch. She smelled like citrus and lavender. She smelled like someone else's cologne. "How was your day?" she asked, taking a sip. "Uneventful," I said, setting my bag down. "Yours?" She shrugged. "Tiring. Might take a bath and crash early." I nodded. She turned and smiled at me, warm and familiar, like nothing had changed, like she wasn't carrying a second life inside the first. I smiled back, but something inside me had shifted. There's a difference between breaking and bending, between wondering and knowing. And now I knew. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe. And somewhere in the silence between her inhaling and exhaling, I started to build the first version of my plan. The next morning I got up before she did. The sun was just beginning to light up the edges of the blinds. That early gray-blue haze where everything feels still, like the world hasn't decided what kind of day it's going to be yet. Madison was asleep beside me, curled on her side, one arm folded under her cheek. Peaceful, innocent-looking, if you didn't know better. I stood there for a while, just watching her breathe. Then I walked into the kitchen and wrote the note. 5 words. Your workout looked interesting. R. I folded it in half and left it on the kitchen counter, right beside the French press and the mug she always used. No confrontation, no dramatics, just a breadcrumb, something quiet, sharp, and undeniable. Something that said, I know. Then I packed a small bag. Just enough for a few nights. Jeans, a toothbrush, the essentials. I didn't slam drawers or leave things half open like in the movies. I moved quietly, calculated, intentional. By the time she woke up, I was already halfway out the door. I went straight to my friend Mark's place. He and I had known each other since college. He worked remotely and had a spare room he used as a gym, which he offered before I even asked. Stay as long as you need, he said, handing me a fresh towel like I just arrived for a casual sleepover. Not the beginning of the end of my marriage. That day passed in a blur. I didn't go to work. Couldn't. I just sat there trying to make sense of everything. The lies, the layers of deception. The way she kissed me goodnight while her mind was with someone else. It felt like I was grieving a death, but the person was still walking around, alive and oblivious. By late afternoon, I started getting texts. Madison, where are you? Then, did you leave this note? Then, what is this supposed to mean? I didn't respond. At 6:12 p.m. she called. I let it ring out. By 7:03, she sent the one I'd been waiting for. We need to talk. I took my time, let the silence stretch. I wanted her to sit with it. When I finally picked up the phone around 8 o'clock, she sounded composed, but only just. Ryan, she started. What's going on? You tell me. A pause. A long one. If this is about the note. It is. Another pause. I could hear her breathing through the line. Small, panicked inhales. I don't know what you think you saw, but I didn't see anything, I said. You kissed him in front of a window, Madison. A window. Do you understand how careless that was? You didn't even try to hide it. Silence. Were you spying on me? I let out a short laugh. Is that what this is now? I'm the bad guy because I happened to see my wife making out with her coworker in a Pilates studio after lying about staying late at the office? She didn't answer. I'm not interested in an argument, I added. I'm not coming home tonight, probably not tomorrow either. Ryan, how long has it been going on? Another long stretch of silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, lower, defeated. A few months. With Dylan. Yes. Just him? That was when her voice cracked. She didn't answer. Took everything in me not to scream, not to hurl the phone across the room. But I stayed calm, controlled. How many? I asked. I don't know, she whispered. Ryan, you don't know? Her voice broke completely. It wasn't planned. It wasn't like I set out to hurt you. Things got complicated. I felt lost. I closed my eyes. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't even the number. It was how casual it sounded. How normalized. Like cheating had just become another part of her lifestyle. Like fidelity was a phase she'd grown out of. I'm staying with Mark, I said. I'm not going to make this uglier than it already is. But I need space. And I need a damn plan. You're blowing this up, she said suddenly, her voice rising, defensive now. You don't even want to talk about it? About what led us here? Oh, I'll talk, I said. Just not with you right now. Because you didn't come to me when you were feeling lost, Madison. You went to them. I hung up. The next day, she started trying to spin it. I got a long email, pages of half apologies, half blame shifting. Paragraphs about how we'd grown apart, how I'd been emotionally unavailable, how she didn't feel seen. The language was textbook, like she had Googled how to justify cheating without sounding like a monster. I didn't reply. Instead, I focused on clarity. On logistics. I asked Mark if I could stay longer. He said yes. I moved more things into the guest room. I canceled dinner reservations we had next weekend. I started separating our shared bills, utilities, insurance, even Spotify. The emotional part would come later. Right now, I needed distance. Not revenge. Not even answers. Just control over the pieces of my life she hadn't broken yet. It wasn't until Friday that I went back to the house. She was home when I got there. Sitting on the couch, arms folded across her chest like she'd been rehearsing some speech. "Are you here to talk?" she asked, eyes red but dry. "I'm here to pack a few more things." She followed me into the bedroom, leaned against the doorframe while I grabbed a second bag. I could feel her watching me, waiting for me to explode, to cry, to beg. I didn't do any of that. She broke first. "You're really not even going to try?" she asked. "To fix this?" I looked up at her, calm, detached. "You slept with other people, Madison. That's not a crack in the wall. That's demolition." Her face fell. "It wasn't about them," she said. "It was about me." "No," I said. "It was about us. And you walked out of us a long time ago." She sat on the edge of the bed. "I'm sorry." "I believe you," I said. She looked up, surprised. "But that doesn't change anything," I added. "There's no version of this where we go back to what we had." "Do you still love me?" she asked quietly. And that hurt, because I did. Or I had. Or I thought I had. But in that moment, all I could think about was that kiss through the glass. Her hand on his arm. The way she had smiled. "I don't know," I said honestly. That night, I stayed at Mark's again. And for the first time, I started to feel something other than shock. I started to feel free. It's funny how betrayal starts as something emotional, even abstract. A kiss, a lie, a shift in tone. You feel it first in your chest, like something breaking inside. But money, that's where it gets real. Tangible. Cold. You can hold betrayal in your hands when it's printed on a bank statement. After I moved into Mark's guest room, I told myself I'd take a couple weeks before making any legal moves. I wasn't ready for lawyers. I wasn't ready for divorce. I wasn't even ready to say the word divorce out loud. The wound was still too fresh. So instead, I focused on routine. I went to work, tried to sleep, pretended I still had some part of my life intact. But one night, while reviewing our shared finances, just to see what bills were still tied to my name, I noticed something odd. Our checking account was lower than expected. Not by a little, over $10,000 lower. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe a miscalculated withdrawal or something pending that hadn't cleared. But I dug in, opened the transaction history, and what I found didn't sit right. The money hadn't disappeared all at once. It had been siphoned out gradually. Small transfers. For $100 here, $750 there. Spread out over the last 4 months. Always labeled the same way, Personal Project M. I stared at that line like it would explain itself. Personal project? Madison never mentioned a project. She worked in PR, not real estate or tech. She didn't own a side business. I would have known. The next day, I called the bank. "Can you confirm if these transfers were scheduled or manually sent?" I asked the woman on the phone. Her name was Erica. She sounded young, distracted. Probably wasn't expecting this kind of call on a Wednesday afternoon. "Looks like they were done manually through the mobile app," she said after a pause. "Initiated from the same IP address each time. That ruled out fraud." It was her. Still, I wanted to give her a chance to explain. Some part of me still wanted there to be a reasonable answer. So I texted, "Need to talk." About the account. She responded immediately. "Can I call?" I let it ring twice before answering. "What's going on?" she asked. I didn't waste time. "What's the personal project?" There was a pause. "It's nothing. Just a thing I was working on. I meant to tell you. You've been transferring money from our joint account for months. Thousands of dollars. Without a word. I was going to pay it back," she said quickly. I just needed a bit of startup capital. For what? Her silence stretched. Madison. Marketing consulting. You already have a full-time job. I know. This was on the side. I didn't believe her. And worse, I could tell she didn't believe herself. You lied, I said. Again. No. Ryan, I wasn't trying to hide it. I just didn't want to explain every little thing while things between us were already tense. That made me laugh. So instead of being honest, you decided to quietly drain our account? You're overreacting. No, Madison. I haven't *n reacting yet. I hung up. That night, I opened my laptop and started pulling every document I could find. Tax returns, bank statements, credit reports, even old invoices from freelance projects I'd done on the side. I wasn't just looking for answers, I was building a case. And that's when I found something I wasn't prepared for. My professional license, my civil engineering stamp, had been used on 2 documents I didn't recognize. One was a project proposal for a small commercial development downtown. The other was an environmental compliance report, something I hadn't touched in over a year. Both had my name, my license number, my electronic signature. I stared at them for a long time. Then I checked the metadata. The files hadn't been created on my work computer. They were created on hers. It hit me all at once. She hadn't just lied. She'd committed fraud. She'd forged my credentials to secure work. Probably for this so-called consulting project. And if that was true, she'd opened herself and me up to massive liability. I felt sick. My stomach turned to ice. I forwarded the files to a personal folder and backed them up twice. I printed hard copies and stashed them in a sealed envelope in my backpack. Then I called Mark into the room. He took one look at my face and said, "What happened now?" "She used my license," I said flatly. "She faked my signature on contract work." He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "That's criminal, man." "I know." I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, I took a sick day from work and made an appointment with a lawyer. Her name was Julia, a referral from Mark's sister. She had a reputation for being sharp, unflinching, and brutally efficient. She looked over the paperwork without flinching. "This is bad," she said calmly. "If your license was used without your consent, you're potentially liable, unless we move fast and establish a timeline. That includes confronting her, documenting her admissions, and filing a report if necessary. So I have to decide whether or not to press charges against my wife?" "She's already made that decision easier for you," Julia replied. "You're protecting your career now, not your marriage." She slid a form across the desk. "You need to open a separate account. Immediately. Start separating your finances today." I did. That night, back at Mark's, I felt a strange numbness settle over me. I didn't feel angry anymore, not like before. I felt clear, like everything had clicked into place. The cheating, the secrecy, the fake consulting, the money. It was all one story. And the story was simple. She wasn't confused. She wasn't lost. She was living a whole other life behind mine. A few days later, I got another call. This one from Madison's firm. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened. "Hi Ryan, this is Kelly. I work with Madison. Well, technically I worked with her. I'm reaching out because, well, I think you should know what's going on. Give me a call." I called her back. What she told me flipped everything on its head. Apparently, Madison hadn't just been sneaking around with Dylan. There were others. Not just at work, but at networking events, weekend conferences. She had a pattern. Flirt, isolate, escalate. Kelly said she only put the pieces together recently, but it was common knowledge in certain circles. "She plays innocent well," Kelly said. "But she's been doing this for a while." I thanked her. And just when I thought I'd hit rock bottom, I got a call from my best friend, Eli. He sounded weird on the phone. Quiet. Serious. "You need to know something," he said. "Last weekend I saw her. At a bar. Not Dylan. Not anyone from work. Someone new. She saw me. And when she did, she froze." He paused. "I didn't want to believe it, man. But now you've got to. I didn't even ask who the guy was. I didn't care. I just sat there, staring at the wall, while the final crack in the foundation gave way. The person I married? She was gone. And what was left wasn't my responsibility anymore. Julia and I built our case quietly. Bank records, forged contracts, ***. TS. I found Dylan's wife, Kelly, and showed her the evidence. She broke down, thanked me. Then Eli, my best friend, called. I saw her again. New guy. Same story. That broke whatever thread of hope I had left. Madison didn't just cheat. She lied like it was routine. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. In court, Madison's lawyer painted me as cold and distant. Julia countered with facts. Fraud, deception, stolen funds. The final blow? A text. If he finds out, I'll just say he imagined it. The judge ruled in my favor. I got the house. She kept her car. When she came to pack, she whispered, I lost you. I didn't flinch. No, I said. You spent me. And just like that, it was over.